Market, coming to you live from my nephew's first birthday party. It is the Lab Report. My name is Todd Rosales, and with me, as always, the ever knowledgeable Mr. Cannabis Law himself, Dustin Robinson.
Good to be here. Last week it was your birthday, and now we got a 1-year-old birthday, so that's exciting. Happy birthday to the 1-year-old.
Constantly celebrating in this house, but today we're going to talk about the news, so let's get into it. Consortium Inc., who you may not be familiar with under that name, announces a management agreement with Freedom Town Holdings LLC for new Florida cultivation and production facility. Consortium, for those of you who don't know, operates as Fluent in the state of Florida. Dustin, we're a vertically integrated state, so how are they bringing in another company here? What does this mean, and tell us about it?
Yeah, so obviously as a vertically integrated state, the MMTCs are required to grow, process, dispense, and deliver. So they're required to do the entire supply chain. Very expensive, very hard to do. As a result, they really aren't experts in any one area of the supply chain because they have to do the entire supply chain. So essentially, what's happening here is that in the statute 301.986, it actually allows these MMTCs to contract out with one company for the cultivation process, dispensing, or delivery. So essentially what they're doing here is they're contracting out. They're saying, hey, we want to focus on the distribution side of the supply chain. So we're going to bring in a company that I guess is well known for growing, and we're going to kind of contract out and delegate out that part of the supply chain, at least for this particular 25,000 square foot location. I think it's about 25,000 square feet. So what's going to happen is this other company, FT, is going to come in and they're going to inject money into building out the cultivation facility, and then they're going to be paid based on how much they actually produce. Remember, they can't be paid off of sales because at the end of the day, they're selling to themselves. They're only handling cultivation. They're going to pass it along to the to the extraction side of it, or to the dispensaries, and the dispensaries are going to sell it. It all happens within one organization. So really what's interesting about this is that, you know, in other states, I deal with a lot of other states where management agreements are relatively common. You know, you have a license, but you contract out with others to do different things, whether it be delivering or processing or cultivating or whatever it may be. You contract out with others to assist you. In Florida, you don't see a lot of it because they have that provision in 301.986 that basically says you can't contract out. And the reason they have that is because the Department of Health really and the state just wants to oversee who it is that is handling this Schedule I federally illegal substance. They want to make sure they are on top of that. They have background checks for every employee. So as a way to stay on top of it and make sure that the state is able to totally oversee it, they basically say, you can't contract out. You have to keep this within one organization. We need to know who your employees are. All your employees need that background check, so on and so forth. So this is really interesting for those that don't have marijuana licenses. As the industry develops and as regulations loosen up, you'll start to see non-licensed marijuana companies being able to potentially being contracted out to do different parts of the supply chain. But each state is different. Florida, Illinois, California, you really got to look at your state and see what you're allowed to do.
I think that makes for a great argument to break up vertical integration, so things like this would be more standardized. But hey, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a guy on an internet show. So
yeah, well, by the way, this makes it look more like a horizontal structure in essence. It's, you know, it's another entity doing the cultivation and then providing it to consortium. So it is somewhat like a horizontal model. And yeah, that's obviously the direction it seems like we're going.
And I hope it continues in that direction. So MISS, ISS, IPPI, we all learned how to spell it, but can we smoke it? Looks like the state of Mississippi will have not one, but two options on their ballot for legalizing medical marijuana, if I read that article correctly, and I'm very good at not doing that. Tell us about the options that Mississippians are going to have, and this sounds like an amazing issue for them to have, to actually choose which way they want their program to go, or did I miss that ball?
No, you're right on point. You're doing a good job interpreting it, and you're usually always on point. So I'm not surprised. But yeah, so basically, what happened is the legislators had plenty of time to pass some sort of regulations in Mississippi to put, cannabis, to pass legislation relating to cannabis, and we've seen this throughout the country. Either you could do it through a constitutional amendment, or the legislator could take action. There's different ways that laws can come to be. Here in Florida, we passed it through a constitutional amendment here. And Illinois was one of the first states that actually passed recreational through legislative action. And basically, Mississippi legislators had their opportunity to pass legislation. They've put out bills. But now what happened is that there's actually, they received enough signatures on a bill that's been getting circulated, or a petition that's been circulated around Mississippi. They got all the signatures, so now it's going to be voted upon by the citizens. And once they got all those signatures, now the legislators saying, okay, now we're ready to pass a bill through the House that will be essentially allow voters to vote on our bill. And the legislators' bill basically only allows people to obtain cannabis if they are terminally ill. So it's a very restrictive measure that the legislator has put out. Obviously, the people that kind of drafted the petition are saying, this is just a pretext. They don't want cannabis, and they're trying to split the vote so that we don't get sufficient votes. So really, hopefully, the best outcome here is that the Mississippi voters are educated. They vote on the petition that was put out that allows for various qualifying conditions, and hopefully that passes so that Mississippi could be a part of the medical marijuana market.
We just need to keep knocking them down, folks. All right, it finally happened. A CBD company inked a deal with football. No, not the NFL. Roger Goodell would never allow that. He won't even sit down with Dave Portnoy and you want him to accept cannabis. Not going to happen, folks. But a CBD company called Synchronicity, a full spectrum hemp oil brand by Functional Remedies, has entered into a partnership with the United Soccer League. United Soccer League is a professional soccer league with teams across both the U.S. and Canada. Golf, to me, has been the only team that's accepted cannabis sponsorships, with Medterra being very involved with the PGA Tour players, maybe not the tour itself. We now have at least U.S. soccer. I believe European soccer has accepted that. Are we seeing, as more of these sports leagues start to not take kind of cannabis off the banned substance list, is this going to be a bigger thing in sports? And are we going to see it more on the American fringe sports such as golf and soccer? Or one day are we going to see this in the NBA and the NFL?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, a lot of your viewers know the difference between hemp and marijuana, but one thing just to be clear on, this is not a company that sells marijuana, which is federally illegal. This is a company that is selling CBD derived from hemp, which through the 2018 Farm Bill is now legal. However, where the confusion lies is that the FDA has basically says CBD in food is illegal, or CBD marketed as a dietary supplement is illegal. So that's why a lot of these bigger companies and different sporting organizations have said, okay, let's hold off on bringing these guys in as sponsors, because even though the 2018 Farm Bill legalized hemp and its derivatives, it reserved authority to the FDA, and the FDA is taking this position with CBD that some of it could be illegal if it's sold as a food or a beverage, so or marketed as a dietary supplement. So it's actually a little surprising that such a big organization like this would put themselves at risk. They are both in U.S. and Canada, so U.S. law does apply to them. But they obviously see that this is an opportunity moving into the future. They see that the FDA really isn't flexing its enforcement power as long as you're not making any health claims. So it looks like they were willing to kind of put their necks out there, take a little bit of risk. I don't know what the contract looks like. I'm sure it's some big dollar numbers that are involved that kind of incentivize them to make that move. But I certainly think that, if the FDA gives us some clear guidelines, which they actually we had some news just a couple days ago that seems to make it look like the FDA is going to be giving us some clarification, hopefully pretty soon. But if the FDA allows it, then you're definitely going to see these sporting organizations start sponsoring it. But as long as the FDA takes issue with CBD, which I don't think is going away, you're going to continue to see a lot of these bigger organizations trying to stay away from it. But we'll just have to see. This is definitely a step in the right direction. They're putting their necks out there, and we'll start to see maybe some bigger companies like this accepting some of these sponsorships. But it'll be very, very slow.
Yeah, you would think with more and more athletes and former athletes accepting cannabis and specifically CBD into their lives and advocating for using it as treatment, that the leagues which employ these players would want to follow suit and want to get behind it and lobby. But we're just not seeing that right now. To plug my show, we had an interview with Evan Britton, a former NFL star, and we had a great conversation about using cannabis in the league, and it's just something that's really, really weird to me. But moving on, because this is a show about the news and not my opinion, let's head all the way across the world to the land down under. Survey says that most Australian medical patients are still using the illicit market. I'm not surprised by this. I'm be shocked if anyone's surprised by this. Most Californians are still using the illicit market. Most Floridians are still using the most illicit market. Most Americans are still using the illicit market, right? Our market is maybe $15 billion of legal cannabis, and the illicit market is probably 5 to 10x that. So, in obvious news, is this a blanketed problem or is it specific to Australia?
Yeah, well, I think you already answered your own question. I think this is a blanket problem. I mean, it's no secret that the illicit market is far bigger than the legal market. So this is a problem we have right here in the United States. We have it in California. We have it in Florida. Florida has a little under 400,000 patients at this point. I can assure you, out of the 20 million population that we have, a lot more than 400,000 people are smoking marijuana or using marijuana in some sort of form. So I think we have that problem right here in our own turf. And the main two issues why this happens is there's two reasons. Number one is the cost and the hassle of getting a patient card. So to become a patient, you have to have a qualifying condition, you have to pay money, you have to go see a doctor. Here in Florida, they don't allow telehealth for new patients. For current patients, they do, but not to first initially get your card. So you, especially with this pandemic, you got to actually go into a doctor's office, pay the money, and do all that. A lot of people don't want to do that. And then the second reason, in states like California and other rec markets, they're just taxing it too much. So people are like, you know what, I could deal with the legal market where I'm spending, $50, where I could deal with my drug dealer down the street that's going to charge me $20. It's a no-brainer. I'm going to go do it for $20 rather than $50. So it's something we got to address. Until we really get rid of the illegal market, we're not going to truly see our legal market reach its full potential. So I'm a big advocate for trying to get rid of the illegal market. We have to do everything we can. I know in California, they are working really, really hard to get rid of it. But I think as soon as they catch one, it kind of pops up in another area. So I don't think they're having much progress there. And it's kind of like the war on drugs. War on drugs has been indisputably, it's been a failure. We spend a tremendous amount of money. I think it's $15 billion a year on the war on drugs, yet we're getting more addicts, more people hooked on drugs. So I think we need, different solutions, different options. And really, I think the answer is more full legalization without as much taxing, without the hurdles of becoming a patient. Let's bring this into the open light and let people operate under a legal framework, a recreational legal framework. And I think that's really the answer, not only for cannabis, but I also think with some of the other substances that we deal with. I do a lot of work with some of the psilocybin businesses and other entheogenic plants. And I think really just freeing these botanical products will eliminate a lot of the issues we have with the black market.
Yeah, if anybody's interested in kind of getting a general overview about this, I would highly recommend Netflix's documentary, The Business of Drugs, specifically the marijuana episode, where it goes into the legal market in California and everything else.
Just watch the first
It's
two.
great
You could just
documentary.
watch the first two episodes and you'll see that the war on drugs has been a complete failure. But yeah, I think like episode 4 is on cannabis, and that's a good episode as well.
Absolutely. So finally, in our last article today, and this one's very interesting to me, the FDA released guidelines for cannabis-related research, but CBD will have to wait. I mean, with CBD being more widely available, you would think that that's where they'd start with the research, especially considering it's 50 states. It can be sold internationally. But beyond that, CBD is a component of cannabis. So you can do research on the entire plant, but not a specific cannabinoid. Is this a good thing or a bad thing for us? Because I think it's a good thing that we're getting cannabis related research.
Yeah, I think this was kind of no news. I mean, it basically what the FDA is saying is stuff that we already know. So the 2018 Farm Bill, it legalized cannabis as long as it has less than 0.3% delta 9 THC. If it does, then we call it hemp. So hemp and all of its derivatives are now legal. That would include CBD, THC, delta 8. If it comes from hemp, it's legal pursuant to the 2018 Farm Bill, which basically kind of revises the CSA, the Controlled Substances Act. However, like we just discussed, the 2018 Farm Bill reserves authority to the FDA, and the FDA is taking the position that CBD in food and CBD marketed as a dietary supplement are illegal. And there's a lot of reasons for that. When we get into that, partially is because of the prescription drug Epidiolex, that's an FDA approved drug, but essentially the FDA is taking that position. So really these this guidelines that they put out is essentially saying, look, if it's hemp, then go about it as you're testing any other product. As long as it doesn't have the 0.3% delta 9 THC and it's not marijuana, then the cannabis plant, we could test it and we're going to treat it just the same as other drug products. You need to go through an investigational new drug application. And after you do that, you need to go have a new drug application. So, there's certain steps that the FDA has, the FDA has for, approving something as a drug. And all they're saying is, look, hemp is now treated the same way, with kind of the caveat that, well, maybe not so much the case for CBD and maybe not so much the case for anything that has above 0.3% THC like marijuana, since marijuana is still a Schedule 1 drug on the CSA. So they basically, it's funny because they kind of say if you do have something above 0.3% THC, you should check with the DEA, because the DEA oversees the CSA. And it's funny because I've tried to call the DEA plenty of times to kind of ask some of these questions, and I know I've had several clients that have called DEA. DEA is giving no guidance on any of that stuff. So it's kind of ironic that they're kind of directing people to give the DEA a call, because the DEA has not been helpful in any form, and neither is the FDA, by the way. If you call the FDA and want to ask them questions about CBD, they're not going to give you any answers. I've represented clients that have actually received warning letters from the FDA, and I've tried to correspond with them both by the phone and by letter, and the FDA won't even respond to the letters, where our letters are just responding to their warning letters, and we get no interaction between us and the FDA. So unfortunately, these agencies don't really know what the hell to do with cannabis, and they're not really willing to answer some of these questions. But I actually think there's a good thing. It's kind of just like showing that cannabis is starting to come back into mainstream. It's saying, look, we're going to treat cannabis like we do any other drug, and it's got to go through all the normal processes and procedures that it needs to go through if you're trying to get it approved as a drug.
NDA was a very lawyer slip of you right there.
Man,
you must have been filling out some paperwork earlier
I'm
today.
doing it. Everyone wants an NDA to be signed all the time, so those 3 letters just slip off my lips all the time.
No worries, man. Well, Dustin, it's been an awesome episode of the Lab Report. Folks, it's Friday. You got a little bit of your workday left. Enjoy yourself. Maybe cut out early. Enjoy the weekend. Dustin, any last words of wisdom before we go into the weekend?
No, just enjoy yourselves. Have a good time. Get out early today and go play some golf.
Absolutely. Well, Tony Reale, thanks for the paper throw idea. We'll see you next week.